He could have saved them the first time they fell. One word from him, and their pride might have survived. But he stayed silent, not out of cruelty, but strategy. Because mercy given too early dies unnoticed, while mercy delayed becomes unforgettable. When they came crawling back, their voices shaking, eyes lowered, they no longer wanted help, they needed it. And in that moment, he understood what Machiavelli meant. Patience is power disguised as stillness. When the world needs you, that's when your silence finally speaks. Most people waste their strength trying to be needed. They give advice before it's asked for, comfort before pain has ripened, and loyalty before it's earned. They call it kindness, but in truth, it's desperation for relevance. The wise do the opposite. They wait, they watch. They let others stumble into the weight of their own arrogance, because need, like respect, cannot be forced, it must mature in silence. Machiavelli understood that the one who rushes to give loses the leverage of being wanted. When you step in too soon, your value dissolves in their gratitude, and gratitude is the weakest chain in human nature. Gratitude fades faster than envy, but when you delay your help, when you let their pride fracture and their confidence collapse, something changes inside them. They begin to see you differently. Your silence becomes heavy. Your absence turns into a question that keeps echoing in their mind. Where are you now? They start to realize what you truly are. Not someone eager to please, but someone who controls the timing of relief itself. That timing is everything. When you choose to wait, you teach them that your presence is not automatic, that your help must be earned, that your words are currency. Every second of your restraint builds tension, and that tension becomes psychological dominance. You stop being one of many. You become the one they look for when everyone else fails. And when they finally turn back to you, humbled, smaller, desperate, you don't have to raise your voice or make a speech. Your silence has already done it. That is the first law of delayed mercy. Never rush to prove your worth. Let them live long enough to understand it on their own. Desperation is the only honest currency in human interaction. People can fake loyalty, pretend gratitude, disguise envy as admiration, but desperation, that strips everything away. You don't have to guess someone's motives when they are desperate. You see their real face. You hear the truth in their voice. Desperation collapses ego, and when ego is gone, the door opens for real control. Machiavelli understood that timing is not just about waiting, it's about letting others descend far enough that your help is no longer optional. When they need you, they don't negotiate. They don't posture. They surrender. But to create that moment, you must do the unthinkable. Let them fall. Let them burn bridges they will wish they hadn't. Let them talk behind your back. Let them think they don't need you. And when the consequences arrive, say nothing. Your silence will rot their confidence faster than any argument ever could. Because in their lowest moment, when doors are closing, when people they trusted walk away, when pride no longer feeds them, they will remember the one person who said nothing and wonder what it meant. That wondering becomes obsession, and obsession turns into dependency. You will find that their return is never as loud as their departure. They come back quieter, smaller, wearing the damage like a second skin. That is when you step forward not too close, not too eager. You don't reach out. You wait, because now your help is no longer a favor. It is a condition, a transaction, a shift in the power dynamic that will never be forgotten. In desperation, people will promise anything. They will rewrite the past to make you look like the only one who ever saw them clearly. They will apologize without understanding what they did wrong, and they will call you kind even if your silence was sharp. That is the moment you must control, because the timing of mercy is what separates leaders from servants. Help too early, and you'll be forgotten. Help too late, and they'll resent you. But help at the exact moment their pride breaks. You own the story from that point on. This is how power is built quietly, not by fighting for attention, but by waiting for desperation to open the door. And when it does, you don't walk in gently, you walk in with terms, because now for the first time, they're not just listening, they're ready to obey. There is a reason why those who save others too quickly are forgotten. The human mind does not honor what comes easily. It does not remember the first hand that reaches out. It remembers the last one, the one that pulled it from the edge when no one else did. That is the curse of early help. It breeds temporary gratitude, not lasting loyalty. People are designed to move on from comfort. They forget who warned them. They forget who stood beside them when they still had options. But they never forget who helped them when no one else would. And the only way to become that person is to wait. Wait until their voices shake when they speak your name. Wait until the pride in their chest is replaced by uncertainty in their eyes. Wait until the weight of their choices bends them low enough to see the ground. Because that is where real memory is formed, not in the moment of the gift, but in the moment of collapse. Machiavelli never taught mercy as a gesture. He taught it as a trapdoor. You do not offer your hand until they have stopped calling for someone else. You do not offer comfort until they have tasted what it means to be ignored. Because when you save them too early, you rob them of that education. You rescue a version of them that still thinks they had control. And people who still think they have control cannot be taught. So you must let them fall. You must let the silence deepen. You must become a mirror to their regret. And when they finally turn to you, not with entitlement, but with trembling in their voice, that is when your words become gospel. That is when your help rewrites their memory of the entire fall. The mind, in its desperation, will shape you into a savior, even if you never moved, and that illusion becomes permanent. That is the psychology of timing. Not just knowing when to speak, but knowing when to wait until your silence becomes louder than anyone else's noise. That silence, that pause before the offer of help, creates value. It turns your presence into a privilege. And privileges are not forgotten. Help is not remembered unless it is felt in contrast to pain. So if you want your mercy to matter, do not give it at the first knock. Let them knock twice. Let them wait in the cold. Let them learn that your door is not opened by noise, but by humility. Because when they look back, they will not remember the day you saved them. They will remember the silence before you did. The world worships generosity, but it punishes those who give too freely. The more accessible you are, the more invisible you become. People may praise your kindness in public, but in private, they begin to expect it. An expectation is the death of gratitude. Machiavelli understood that mercy without boundaries is not mercy, it's surrender. It is the quiet act of placing your worth beneath someone else's comfort. That is why true power never gives without calculation. It never offers help just to feel good or to be liked. It gives when the cost is high and the return is control. The illusion of generosity is dangerous because it makes you believe you're gaining affection, when in truth, you're being filed away in someone's mind as a resource, not a ruler. People do not bow to the ones who saved them first. They bow to the ones who made them wait, the ones who watched them fall and still had the strength to offer a hand without rushing. That's what separates mercy from obedience. One is given, the other is earned. If you rush to help, You give them no reason to change, no reason to reflect, no reason to remember. But if you step back and allow silence to do the teaching, if you let them feel the weight of your absence, then when you finally move, your presence arrives like thunder, and thunder is never ignored. Your help, delayed and deliberate, becomes sacred. They do not forget you because they felt your power long before they saw your face. Generosity, when unguarded, becomes a discount version of yourself. They begin to believe your time has no cost, your advice has no price, your energy has no limit. And once they believe that, they will drain you without guilt and walk away without remorse. That is the price of being too kind too quickly. You teach them how to treat you before they've earned the right to know you. Machiavelli's lesson is cruel only to the naive. Never offer help to someone who still believes they can walk away from you. Make them circle back. Make them question their decisions. Make them remember who watched, who waited, who said nothing while they struggled, and who still held the door open, not wide, but just enough to be noticed. That is generosity sharpened into strategy. That is mercy turned into memory. If you want your kindness to leave a scar, never give it too soon. Let it arrive late. Let it arrive cold. Let it arrive like something they'll never ask for twice. Control is not taken by force. It is offered in silence and accepted only when all other doors have closed. If you want real power, don't try to convince people you're important. Let the world forget you, just long enough for your absence to be noticed. And when they realize no one else can give them what you can, that's when the shift begins. Machiavelli understood that to become irreplaceable, you must first become invisible. You must allow them to walk away from you, speak over you, underestimate you. Let them burn the bridges they may one day beg to cross again. Say nothing. Wait. Because in their mind, you're no longer present, no longer useful. But usefulness is not measured in presence. It's measured in timing. And timing favors those who wait. You don't need to beg to be chosen. You need to become the last option standing when they have run out of pride. To do this, you must first create distance. Not physical, but psychological. Remove your reactions. Remove your offers. Remove your voice from their chaos. Let them believe they have power without you. Let them taste life without your input, without your protection. Watch how quickly the noise around them collapses when no one steps in to help. Watch how the people they trusted begin to disappear. It doesn't take long for reality to reveal who's temporary and who's permanent. That's when your name resurfaces. That's when you become the only name they remember. Not out of love, not even out of guilt, but out of survival. Because when people are desperate, they don't call the friend who comforted them. They call the one who can fix it. And by then, you will no longer be just a person. They will see you as a solution. That transformation is not accidental. You've built it through stillness, through patience, through deliberate silence. You've turned yourself into something more than present. You've become necessary. The ones who shout to be noticed are always the first to be forgotten. But the one who waits, who lets others spiral in their absence, becomes unforgettable. That is how you become the only option. Not by being available, but by making them feel your lack so deeply that your return becomes an answer. And when they finally knock again, they do not ask. They request. They submit. They speak with a different tone. Because now, you are not just someone they want, you are someone they need. And need is the foundation of power, not charm, not charisma. Just quiet necessity wrapped in timing. Wait for it, and when the moment comes, do not rush. Open the door slowly. Let them feel what it took to stand there. Power is not shown in how loudly you speak, but in how calmly you say no. Most people fear the word. They see it as rejection, as the closing of opportunity. But in the hands of the patient, no becomes a weapon of control. It is not always permanent. It is often a pause, a deliberate interruption, a way of reminding others that your help is not a right, but a privilege. Machiavelli understood that the strongest move is not to give freely, but to deny gently, with reason wrapped in silence. Every refusal teaches them something. It teaches them that you do not move with emotion, that you are not available on demand, that your kindness has layers, and those layers must be earned. When people hear no from someone they rely on, their mind begins to work differently. They replay the conversation. They question their tone. They wonder what they did wrong. In that uncertainty, a new kind of respect is born, not the shallow respect that comes from favors, but the deep, a fearful kind that only silence can create. Because when you say yes too often, you dilute your influence. Your name becomes background noise. But when you say no with poise and finality, you signal that your power is rooted in choice, not fear, not guilt, just choice. And choice is everything. You do not owe anyone your energy. You do not have to explain your silence. The more they ask, the more they expose how badly they need your presence. And the longer you withhold, the more valuable you become. Your distance becomes a mirror. They begin to see their own weakness reflected back at them. That reflection burns, and in that burn, they begin to recalibrate. They start to approach you differently, softer, slower, more aware. That is the goal, not just to be wanted, but to be respected before you even speak. That kind of control cannot be faked. It is built slowly, through a series of withheld gestures, a favor not granted, a response not given, a hand not offered. These are not acts of cruelty. They are corrections. Psychological boundary setting that trains the other person to see you as a force, not a fallback. And when the time finally comes for you to say yes, it will not be received as kindness. It will be felt as relief. That is the power of a well-timed no. It teaches patience. It demands humility. It raises the cost of your presence until only the serious can afford it. So the next time you feel the urge to give, to please, to soften, don't. Let silence teach for you. Let absence sharpen their memory. Let your restraint echo longer than any words could. There is a shift that happens when they come back. At first, they left with pride in their step, confidence in their voice, certain they didn't need you. They spoke as if they had options. They moved through the world believing their decisions were final. But time has a way of thinning the crowd. The ones they ran to are now gone. The doors they slammed in your face are now shut behind them. And when they return, it is never the same person who walked away. They come back quieter. Their voice lacks the sharpness it once had. Their eyes avoid yours. It is not shame, it is recognition. They remember what they said, what they thought they could do without you. But more than that, they remember your silence. They remember that you never begged them to stay. You never chased them. You let them leave, not with resentment, but with understanding. And now, they are standing in front of you, not as equals, but as someone changed by time and consequence. This is the moment that separates the powerful from the impulsive. Most people, when they see someone return humbled, rush to make peace. They soften. They forgive too fast. They speak before the silence has finished its lesson. Do not make that mistake. Let them sit in the discomfort of their return. Let them explain themselves without interruption. Let them feel the weight of what it means to walk back into a room they once thought they'd never need again. Machiavelli knew that humility must be witnessed before it can be trusted. A person on their knees does not need to be lifted immediately. Sometimes they need to feel the floor, not out of cruelty, but out of clarity. You are not the same as when they left. You've grown in silence. You've watched from the distance. You've allowed reality to do what your words never could. That kind of power does not demand acknowledgement. It reveals itself in posture, in the stillness of your presence, in the way their tone adjusts mid-sentence without you saying a word. They don't just want your help now. They want your forgiveness, your approval, your attention. And that is the moment you decide not if you will offer your hand, but what the cost will be. Because their return is not the end of a cycle. It is the beginning of your terms. And the way they walk back in will tell you everything about how they'll stay. So say nothing, watch everything, and remember when they return smaller, your silence still holds the throne. This is where power changes hands. When they return, broken and quieter, you no longer offer help, you offer terms. And those terms are not negotiable. You do not ask them what they're willing to give. You tell them what is required. This is the moment Machiavelli lived for. Not the moment of mercy itself, but the moment where mercy becomes law. Because now, they're not asking for support. They're asking for survival. And survival comes with a price. You name it. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just clearly, calmly, without flinching. You do not demand apology. You demand alignment. You do not ask for explanations. You ask for obedience. The shift must be unmistakable, because they need something only you can give. And once they realize that, they will pay in whatever currency you choose. Loyalty, silence, sacrifice, respect. You've become more than a person now. You're a gateway, a necessary step toward their next breath of relief. And that means you get to define the terms of their forward motion. People think power is taken by force. But the sharpest form of control is when they give it to you willingly, because they know the alternative is worse. That's what delayed mercy creates, a hunger so deep that even surrender feels like rescue. You hold the leverage now because you waited, because you were willing to let them fall, because you were strong enough not to rescue them until they finally understood what you were worth. And now, that worth must be honored. If you make your help free, they will treat it like air necessary, but expected. But if you make it earned, if you make it rare, if you make it conditional, they will treat it like fire, precious, dangerous, unforgettable. The beauty of this moment is not just in what you say, it's in what you no longer need to explain. Your silence trained them. Your absence burned them. And now your presence alone is heavy enough to command seriousness. You don't need to punish them. The world already did. You just need to stand still and let their desperation do the talking. When they say, "Tell me what you want," do not smile. Do not gloat. Do not soften. Just answer. Because this is not revenge. This is structure. This is order. This is the moment your patience turns into a contract. And from this point forward, every interaction with you carries weight. They will think twice before leaving again. Not because you threatened them, but because they remember what it costs to come back. That's the secret of delayed mercy. It doesn't just save, it reshapes. And the price is never paid in words. It's paid in changed behavior. Mercy is a word people associate with softness, forgiveness, warmth. But Machiavelli knew better. Mercy, when given too soon, is a gift. But mercy, When given after silence, after suffering, after need has replaced pride, it becomes something else. It becomes leverage. It becomes memory. It becomes a tool that reshapes the way they see you forever. You didn't chase them. You didn't beg them to understand. You let them drown in their own certainty. And when they finally gasp for air, you were the only shore left. That changes a person. It plants something in their mind, a memory they'll never forget. And that memory is yours to control. Because now, every time they speak to you, they remember how low they had to bend to reach your hand. Every time they think of leaving again, they remember the silence that came before your yes. This is where real manipulation lives, not in lies, but in timing. You didn't twist the truth. You didn't force their hand. You simply waited. And when you finally stepped forward, you did so as a choice, not an obligation. That choice makes them feel seen, but also owned, because deep down, they know you could have walked away. You could have let them stay broken, but you didn't. And that mercy, delayed and precise, now carries a weight heavier than any threat ever could. You've become more than a person in their life. You've become a moment. A moment they replay when doubt creeps in. A moment that reminds them who they owe. Not just in words, but in posture, in tone, in obedience. That is the brilliance of strategic mercy. It allows you to leave a scar without ever raising your voice. It makes them loyal, not through force, but through gratitude they're too ashamed to admit. And that shame is part of the design, because it humbles them every time they remember how far they had to fall before you pulled them back. You don't need to remind them. Life already does. Their mind already does. You've become a shadow behind their thoughts, a quiet presence they measure all other loyalties against. That's not kindness, that's power, and it lasts longer. So never be afraid to wait. Never feel guilty for your silence. Mercy given too early dissolves. Mercy given too late resents. But mercy given at the exact breaking point, that becomes unforgettable. That becomes a form of control they carry within them. They'll thank you. They'll call you good. But what they'll never admit is that they're still moving according to your timing. Still obeying rules you never had to speak aloud. That is how mercy becomes manipulation. Not through cruelty, but through unforgettable precision. There's a quiet shift that happens after mercy is accepted. It's not immediate. It doesn't arrive with fanfare or thanks. It unfolds in how they look at you, in how their words are chosen more carefully, in how they check themselves before they speak. You begin to notice they move slower around you, more measured, as if they're always trying to stay in your good graces. That's not affection. That's not fear. That's ownership. Not the loud kind. Not the kind that chains or commands. This is deeper. This is psychological. Machiavelli knew that real power doesn't come from loud loyalty. It comes from quiet obedience. The kind that doesn't need reminders. The kind that lives in posture, in hesitation, in lowered eyes when disappointment is sensed. You help them, but not without terms. And even if those terms were never spoken aloud, they were understood. Because when someone saves you at your lowest, part of you never fully rises again without looking over your shoulder. Part of you stays bent, not from weakness, but from memory. And that's how they begin to serve you, not because you asked, not because you forced them, but because they remember the silence before your yes. That silence is what trained them. And now your presence carries weight. Your disappointment feels heavier than punishment. Your approval becomes something they crave, not out of admiration, but out of need to feel redeemed. You've become a compass they quietly follow, a presence they measure themselves against, and they start doing things you never asked for. They check in more. They anticipate your expectations. They defend your name when you're not around. Not out of loyalty, but because losing your trust again feels like losing safety. This is the aftermath of delayed mercy. You didn't raise your voice. You didn't create fear. You created memory. And memory, when tied to survival, becomes the strongest motivator. People don't stay close to those who helped them once. They stay close to the ones who waited, the ones who withheld, the ones who could have walked away but didn't. That kind of power lives in the background. It doesn't scream. It hums beneath every interaction. You are now the standard they measure their actions against. The fear of losing you a second time becomes part of their emotional system. And this isn't manipulation. It's consequence. You offered help when it mattered most. And in return, they offered you themselves, quietly, completely, without ever saying it aloud. That's what it means to own someone without touching them, not through pressure but through precision, not through force but through restraint. You moved when the world turned its back on them. And now, part of them will always face you. If you had helped them too soon, none of this would exist. They would have thanked you politely, maybe even praised your kindness for a week or two, then gone back to treating you like background noise. Because early help creates comfort, not consequence. And comfort never creates change. When people still think they have options, your assistance is viewed as generosity. But when all their options vanish and you're the last one standing, your assistance becomes gospel. Machiavelli understood that the illusion of equality must be shattered before loyalty becomes real. You cannot teach someone to value your presence if they believe they can live without it. That is why you must let them walk away. You must let them believe their pride will protect them. You must let them make their choices, even as you watch them burn the bridges you built. Because in their mind, they still had control. And as long as they believed that, your presence could never feel sacred. But when the smoke clears, when the consequences settle into their bones, and they realize no one else is coming to fix it, that's when they see you clearly. That's when the silence becomes unbearable. That's when your absence begins to haunt them. And when they return, something fundamental has shifted. They no longer see you as someone to impress or manipulate. They see you as someone who chose not to save them when they still thought they didn't need saving. That memory, that waiting, that silence, it becomes the lesson. It humbles them without a word. If you had helped too soon, you would have been their relief, not their reckoning. But because you waited, because you withheld, you became the line they had to crawl back to. And crawling leaves marks. Those marks do not fade. They linger in every future conversation, in every decision they make around you, in every act of deference that was once unthinkable. This is what people miss when they chase validation by being helpful. They think being first makes them memorable, but in truth, it makes them forgettable. The first hand they reach for is never the one they remember. It's the hand they had to earn, the one that made them wait, the one that forced them to reconsider their worth. You are that hand now, and it's only because you said no when it would have been easier to say yes. So when they thank you, do not smile too quickly. They are not thanking you for what you did. They are thanking you for what you made them realize. That real help, the kind that changes people, never comes early. It comes after the fall, when pride is gone, when options are gone, when only one path remains. Yours. Power is never loud when it's real. It does not need reminders, rewards, or recognition. True power is felt in how people adjust themselves around you without being told. It is seen in the way their voice changes. Their eyes flicker, Their body leans forward not because you asked, but because they remember the silence. Machiavelli knew that control gained through force fades quickly, but control earned through restraint lasts forever. You didn't have to demand obedience. You created the conditions where obedience became natural. You let them feel absence, let them fall, let them sit in the discomfort of their own mistakes. And when you finally stepped in, it wasn't to rescue, it was to restructure. You didn't just help them, you redefined the relationship. And that new definition is silent, permanent, unspoken. They do not serve you because you helped. They serve you because you waited. Because you made them earn what they once took for granted. And that memory reshapes how they think. It lives in their hesitation. It shapes their behavior. They do not want to return to the place where they had nothing to offer, so they begin to give. Not out of guilt, but out of fear. The fear of losing your presence again. The fear of watching that door close once more. And so they adapt. They listen more. They speak less. They consider what you would say, even when you are not there to say it. That is how you know the shift is complete. You have not just influenced their decisions, you have changed the way they move through the world. That is obedience born from experience, not pressure. It cannot be undone. It cannot be faked. It is carved into them by silence, by absence, by the memory of a yes that took too long to arrive. And it makes you dangerous in the quietest way possible. You never had to raise your voice. You never had to beg. You simply allowed the world to teach what your words never could. That kind of obedience is not dramatic. It is not theatrical. It looks like loyalty, but it is deeper. It is psychological realignment. You've become their reference point, their internal compass, their unspoken authority, and it all began with patience. You didn't flinch. You didn't interfere. You simply waited for them to understand. And now, they don't just follow you. They carry you inside them. Every decision they make now passes through the filter of your silence. That is the power of delayed mercy. It turns help into hierarchy. It turns rescue into rule. And it leaves behind something far more valuable than gratitude obedience without resistance. Most people rush to save. They see someone drowning and throw a rope without thinking. They believe help is a virtue that should never wait. But Machiavelli knew better. He understood that mercy, when given too early, is wasted. That help, when unearned, is forgotten. True power lies in restraint, in silence, in the discipline to watch someone fall just far enough that they remember who let them. Because once they need you, once they taste desperation, once their pride is gone and their options are closed, then your presence becomes something sacred. Not casual, not comfortable, sacred. And in that moment, you don't just help them, you name your price. You define the terms. You draw the line between what was and what now is. They will nod, they will agree, not because you forced them, but because you timed it perfectly. That is the final law of delayed mercy. Never rush to be useful. Wait until being useful makes you irreplaceable. Wait until your silence becomes unbearable. Wait until the same mouth that once dismissed you now lowers its voice in your presence. That is when you move, not out of emotion, but out of control. Because now, every action you take is remembered. Every word you speak is weighed, and every kindness you show is counted because they know what it costs to receive it. You no longer walk beside them. You hover above them, not through ego, but through memory. The memory of what you let them endure, and the mercy you made them earn. That kind of power is permanent. It does not fade with time. It grows in silence. It lives in the choices they now make around you. You are no longer just a person. They see you as a moment that changed everything, and they never want to return to who they were before you said yes. So let them fall. Let them forget you. Let them believe they don't need you. Then wait. When they come back, do not smile too quickly. Do not speak too soon. Just watch. And when the silence has said enough, move. But never for free. If this opened your eyes to the psychology of timing, control, and silent authority, subscribe. This is just one law of many, and the next one may be the one that finally changes how you see power forever.